Hello, everyone. Welcome to What Works. This is the podcast about what really makes nonprofits thrive. I'm Marla Moody, your host, and after years of building and scaling teams around the world, I've learned that success has patterns. And what is the best operational secrets we found a lot of times is not in the boardroom, but it's actually in the field. So here I'm going to be sitting down with fellow leaders to uncover all those secrets. I want to share hope. I want to swap stories. And I want to learn from the wins and challenges behind organizations that are really making an impact in the world. So, with no further ado, I want to introduce you to Marc. He's the CEO of Waterkeepers Alliance, and it's a united um, force of power to be able to get Waterkeeper Alliance. If I'm not mistaken, you fight so that everyone has the right to have drinkable, fishable, and swimmable water. But Marc, let's hear from you. Please introduce yourself and share what feels important for people to know about you and Waterkeeper.
Well, Marla, thanks so much for having me here today. I'm excited to be here with you. And you're right, I'm the CEO of Waterkeeper Alliance. We're a global nonprofit that unites more than 300 locally based clean water advocacy organizations, and we focus on citizen action, science, and law on issues that affect waterways, from pollution to climate change. We have about we have currently 305 of these locally based waterkeeper groups in 45 countries, and together, they're united for, as you said, protecting everyone's right to clean water. And these are women and men from different languages, different cultures, different religions, and they're all united in that quest for um, protecting everyone's right to clean water in their community.
Hmm. I would love to know, as you've worked with different people all around the world, I've also had a lot of international experience. What are some of the places that you found the most intriguing in light of the work that you're doing?
I would say there's so many. I think, I can share with you a story that I have that's been with me for about 20 years. It's kind of I would say it's been a constant inspiration to me over the course of those 20 years. And so if I go back to exactly 20 years ago to 2005, this is when I first started working at Waterkeeper Alliance, and our my boss at the time asked me if I wanted to go to Senegal in Western Africa to meet with a group that wanted to start a waterkeeper organization. And I said, sure. And I headed over to a place called Han Bay, which is just outside the capital city of Dakar. Han Bay at the time had about 40,000 citizens with no sanitation service, myriad diseases, and 25 years before I went there, so looking at 50 years or almost 50 years ago at this point, Han Bay it was really an artisanal fishing village with beautiful white sand beaches. And over time, though, massive amounts of pollution made it so they could no longer fish in the bay. And so the people that were fishing had to go out into the open ocean for longer periods of time. It cost them more money. It took them away from their families, and it was very dangerous for them to be out in these small wooden boats with ocean tankers going by. The village in Han is basically organized by football clubs or soccer clubs, right? And there's this one, everybody belongs to a different soccer club there, a different football club there. And this one club called ASC Iraq was very engaged in community programs. And they were teaching villagers about important social issues like hygiene, HIV/AIDS, and more. They also had a vision for cleaning up their bay. They wanted to restore that original grandeur of their bay, that those the white sand beaches and being able to fish and swim in their bay. But they weren't having a lot of success. And one of the villagers had moved to Toronto, Canada, and he learned about our water keepers up in Canada. And so the next time he was back in the village, he told the club that maybe they should start a water keeper to help realize their vision. And so that's how I ended up there. And I spent about a week with their very charismatic leader, this guy named Mbeke Sek. And it was really the most polluted waterway I'd seen at the time, and still in my top two, probably. If I was looking out at the water, uh, on my right, we had about a 10 foot wide, 10, 15 foot wide, 10 foot, 15 feet deep cement, open air cement canal full of raw sewage coming from the capital city. And it was carrying raw sewage into the bay right next to the villagers' homes, right through their fish market into the bay. In front of me was the village chief's home, and underneath the village chief's home was a pipe carrying petrochemicals from the a Libyan-owned oil facility across the way from the village. And then to my left was a pipe that was discharging a brown noxious liquid from a meat rendering facility, like a slaughterhouse. And of course, mentioned before, there's no sanitation service there. So when people were done cooking and cleaning, everything went in, all the waste went into a bucket, was taken down and just dumped on the beach. So all along the beach was just matted with food waste, household waste, then growing algae and flies and all sorts of uh, nasty things. So yeah, it was a really pretty messy situation. And after spending time with Mbeke and the other villagers, I told him that I was really inspired by their vision, really excited by what they wanted to do, but I was also very concerned about how we were going to be able to try to provide them any help by being part of our network. I said, look, at this point in time, there are no other waterkeeper groups on the entire continent of Africa, so you don't have that close proximity to other groups that you network with, and we don't have any staff that speak Wolof or French. And so
Mm.
I had my concerns, but and Becky responded to us saying, you have an internationally recognized brand that will bring us credibility. He said, I'm going to learn English and I'm going to come to all of your conferences and your training sessions and your webinars, and I'm going to learn from all the veteran groups in this network and learn what strategies they use. And I'm going to deploy those strategies in my watershed. And so, with that persuasive argument, we decided to start this group called Han Baykeeper in early 2006. And so, a few years later, we were able to help them secure a small grant that they used to turn their office into an internet cafe, which is really smart because there was no internet service in the community. And what happened there was it gave them a voice to the outside world, gave them a small sustainable source of revenue, but most importantly, it made their office, of all of the other football clubs, it made their office the focal point of the community, where they were able to engage the community in understanding that they had a right to a clean bay and how they could do it and how they could engage and interact with Han Baykeeper to make it a reality. So over the following years, with that opportunity, Han Baykeeper really increased its influence in the community. Becky did indeed learn English, and he did go to all of our conferences, and you could see him always walking around learning from others. And I remember vividly then, 8 years later, in 2014, I was actually in Nepal working with some groups there, and after a long day, came home and was looking at my computer and saw a story about how Han Baykeeper had played an instrumental role in convincing the Senegalese government and various European development institutions to commit $68 million to clean up Han Bay. And that, now has turned into a $130 million cleanup that includes 17 local towns and other villages. They are expanding a sewage treatment plant to be able to take care of that sewage that was flowing directly into the bay. They now have sanitation service in their community. And once that's completed, it's going to be the largest clean water project in the history of Senegal and will impact more than 500,000 Senegalese citizens. And so, what inspires me so much is that this all started from a small football club that had a vision to clean up its bay and pursued it with dedication and perseverance. And I think it's also a lesson in the power of networks, that they
Yes.
joined this web of organizations connected by a shared purpose, and each one of those connections added resilience and creativity and strength. And so to me, that's just been such a powerful and transformative experience to have.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Think how many people are positively impact daily. Think how fewer lives, have that negative, or just how much health people have, and so thank you for that. That's very inspiring. That's awesome. And I love how you said it, because it really does. There was, even amongst, you had border challenges and like a whole different continent, language issues, and yet there was a clear, there was the value of having that cleaned up and them owning that, the ownership they had to say, we're going to learn from you. But the ownership that I see them having, to the point of raising the money to go to meetings and taking the work to, to learn English. And what a brilliant model of having influence and income stream.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to have those stories and for have a platform like this to be able to tell those stories because we're just surrounded day in and day out with negative energy, negative stories, and there are so many good things happening around the world of people that are taking ownership, as you say, and bringing good things to life and helping people with their health and the challenges that they have.
And that idea of, when it works, it's so good and so encouraging. And yet, probably in the day in and day out, you see, the big industries and the all the opposition. How do you you know, keep that vision and keep that hope more than just the poster on your wall? Like how do you keep that in front of you, in front of your team?
I think that it's we step back to the part where, we have to start with the premise that we all agree on that water is our most important resource. We all know that we need water to survive. And certainly, we learned that in elementary school or earlier, right? But if you think about it for a moment, like every single aspect of our life is affected by water. And often it's a hidden value. If you don't see it, you don't realize it. But if you think about it, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the plates we eat from, the pens we write with, this whole platform we're on right now wouldn't exist without water. And and even, in all of its forms, whether it's rain or sleet or snow, water is essential to the atmosphere and the air we breathe. And then you think about, like, we know that people love being on in and around water. It's because it makes us happier, it makes us healthier, it reduces stress, and it brings us peace. And so I think when we talk about it at the office and things, it's about we're inspired by all of this army of people all around the world that every day are going up against deep-pocketed polluters. They're under-resourced. They have huge challenges they're facing, but they persevere and they're dedicated and they inspire us day in and day out to keep pushing to protect this incredible resource that we are blessed to have, but we take advantage of, we take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've seen is, especially in the nonprofit world, it's really hard to find really good talent and sometimes even harder to keep it. What are some of the secrets you've done to bring in good people, whether it's like your team or those that you partner with? And how do you find them and how do you keep them?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It is challenging. I think that, I'm trying to remember what the book is now. There's a book that made an impact of what I like to look for, and that's people that are humble, hungry, and smart. And you maybe know the book I'm referring to.
Turn no, it's ideal team player.
Ideal team player, exactly. Yes. So, looking at people that are humble, that are, it's not about their ego and status. It's about, pointing out it's a team effort, right? And so you've got humble, you've got hungry. People are always looking for new challenges. They're excited about learning new things, taking on new responsibilities. They don't need to be. They always work hard, and they can work individually, but also as a team. And then the smart piece of understanding people and being able to recognize a group situation and how to deal with others in an effective way. Uh, I think in terms of keeping people, it's challenging. There's so many opportunities out there that people can explore. And I think, part of it is we've been lucky to have a lot of really talented team of people who are really dedicated to the mission and really get the critical role that they're playing towards that mission. And we are able to, recognize that and emphasize that throughout everything that we do each day.
Uh, I love that. I've actually built a framework to do workshops around that topic to
Yeah.
really be able to level up because every single person is going to be weak in at least one of those areas, sometimes two. And like how do you have a culture to be able to self-identify and build accountability to really raise that ideal team player? But I love that you mentioned that because that's been part of my journey as well, actually.
Yeah, well, and every day is a learning journey, right? Like I'm still working on being all the pieces of humble, hungry, and smart. We all you can always keep on getting better at each one.
Yeah. And just being able to identify, where are those areas that trip us up, or, how do we get to a place where there is clarity and can really work, independent and as a team, depending on the need. What
Yeah,
is that saying that the African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go long, go with others.
right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yeah, and we're going through a strategic planning process right now, and so it's been really important from the beginning that our team is involved in every aspect of it. It's not just a board process, or it's not all. They're one of the key stakeholders and have to really own it from the beginning to see themselves in it and to be able to want to own that implementation to make sure it's a success.
how has that affected like morale, or for them to maybe, yeah, how has it affected you them to have that process?
I think they've been really engaged in it, so it's been that's which is really exciting because we've certainly in the past have we've had a lot. I've been around for a lot of strategic plans, and there have been times where maybe staff wasn't as thoughtfully engaged, brought into it early enough in the process to have that ownership all the way around. So we want to make sure that was clear from day one at this time. And I feel it as we go into these meetings. There's a lot of engagement with the team members. They're questioning things, coming up with new ideas, and that's what really makes us stronger together.
So what I'm hearing too is that engagement, the fact that they could question things means there's a safe environment.
That's what we hope. I hope we're providing that. Yeah.
When people don't feel like their voice matters, like they're dismissed or it's unsafe to, that's when that's when it goes away. So just hearing those elements, um, you can see that those times of strategic planning would go deeper and further because of that safe environment that you mentioned enough of those words to know that is on a good pattern.
Yeah, I think you bring a good point. That's an important point there you make,
Yeah.
for
Could
sure.
you share a time in your organization where your core organization's core values guided you through a tough operational time or strategic decision?
Well, I mean, there's so many. You think about the COVID
Oh, yes.
or if you're, if people that were working in 2008 with the economic, the Great Recession and so forth, there have been so many different examples and opportunity or examples, not examples and opportunities you try to make out of them. But I guess I would say um, probably the we just talked about this actually starting our new strategic plan when we had our first sort of um, big big meeting or a big retreat on it, which was trying to like ground us in the reality of the world we're operating in today, right? So the last time that we engaged in a strategic plan was in 2020.
Okay.
And I actually didn't meet our strategic planning consultants until 2023. We did it all virtually. And so that was a challenge. But that whole year brought these unprecedented challenges of the pandemic, and it forced rapid adaptation of how we operate, how we communicate, how we engage. And it really accelerated our digital presence, and it highlighted but it also highlighted a remarkable resilience of both our team and the movement that we work through. But you saw this fragility of systems. You saw the how interconnected the world is, and you saw these disproportionate impacts on vulnerable communities. And through the course of the past 5 years, we've also seen significant political and social upheaval. We've seen assaults on environmental protections. You've seen the rise of misinformation. You've seen increasing polarization, and those are headwinds that have made our work to fight for clean water even more challenging and requiring us to be even more vigilant and establishing stronger coalitions and being more innovative. And so I think to get through that challenge, everybody really rolled up their sleeves. We stuck to our core, understood what our mission is, and really looked out for each other. And I thought it was like a really great opportunity to, as challenging it was, to see that remarkable resilience that everyone had.
Ah, I love stuck to your core. That's such an important piece because really strategic plans can be easily left off the wayside, but having that core, like having the your core values that which builds culture, that builds the resilience. And I love that you kind of finish that with that because really culture eats strategy for lunch, right? If you have an unhealthy culture, you can talk all day about strategy, but the fact that you stuck to that core and you were able to pivot, right? To have that agility around those times, yeah, the financial times, the COVID,
Yeah, I
the
mean, it's
reason,
not.
yeah, it builds resilience. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's not easy, and it takes a village, as they say, right? It's having a lot of good people on the team and a lot of good support.
Yeah. What's something that you would say you learned in light of doing best practices, especially with the misinformation going on now, but what you've learned from COVID or some of those economic downturns? What has helped you with it keep moving forward?
I think that, even though we're seeing the urgency of the global water crisis and it being exacerbated by climate change and by pollution and by inequitable access, we also have to keep in mind that there are opportunities there that we need to figure out how to identify and leverage. There's a global, or I would say a growing public awareness about the importance of water and the importance of clean water. There's an increasing demand for corporate accountability. And there are also really powerful voices coming up from frontline communities. And we got to look at those opportunities as fertile ground for our advocacy and impact, and to be able to, as you say, stick to our core, but and see where we can take advantage of those opportunities to try to push back against those headwinds that are coming at us.
Sticking to that core, that
Yeah,
makes pivoting possible.
right. Yeah.
When I think it's common with people who are passionate about what they do, and nonprofits um are are full of that, where it's hard to know sometimes when work starts and stops. A lot of times we don't kind of stick to a 9 to 5, especially with travel and international, which can breed to like burnout or just exhaustion. What are tricks that you have found to help with that work-life balance?
I'm still looking, but
Aren't we all, huh?
but it's after this many years, I've tried to definitely figure out how to. We certainly encourage our teams to take time off and make sure they're taking care of themselves, but and also trying to figure out. To me, it's similar to. I was trying to get community members or going out and doing presentations and talks and things to get people to tap into their why, like why is clean water important to you, and sort of to use that in your own personal life too, like why are the what things are important to you, and make sure that you're spending time on them. And there are, as challenging as things can be, you've got to be able to preserve yourself and to take care of yourself for sure if you want to be in it for the long haul. And for these, one of the things that's challenging for us, I think, is that these battles last for a decade or longer. We've got some, there was one of our founders, so I've always looked at as a mentor, when he would see a case coming in or whatever type of potentially polluting project was being proposed. He would look at it and analyze different pieces of it, and he'd say, "Well, it looks like we're gonna have to throw a decade at this."
I love that.
And you've got to be able to take your you got to be able to last that decade and longer to be able to get through the fight.
Yeah. So who are some people that have inspired you with leadership, with keeping with the cause?
There are a lot of them. I would say, well, this is timely, I will say, because we recently just said goodbye to one of our founders who passed away at the end of August. And his name was Rick Dove. And he was one of our founders of Waterkeeper Alliance. He was also the first Neuse River keeper in North Carolina. And he was a proud Marine who served his country. And for many people, he was a hero, he was a friend, he was a mentor, but importantly, into your question, he was a reminder for people of what it meant to follow your calling with your heart, your whole heart. He was as a young child, he grew up in the Chesapeake Bay and then, went into the Marines. He put in about 25, 30 years in the Marines and then headed over to North Carolina where he was going to spend the rest of his days fishing. But all of a sudden, the river was devastated by pollution and fish kills because it's going back to the early 1990s. And so his life took a whole turn. He'd planned on spending it fishing. What began as a sort of a heartbreak seeing these fish kills became his calling and turned him into being this Neuse River Keeper, the founder of Waterkeeper Alliance. He was this passionate, uncompromising, fearless warrior who fought for clean water. He showed us that protecting a river was it's about more than just science and law. It's also about courage and love and really listening to the water. One of the things he used to always say to us was, I'll probably be paraphrasing this, but like if you um, have a question about what you're supposed to do, he would say, I just go down to the river and I would sit there and I would ask, what would you want if you could speak to the river? And his leadership in that really inspired generations of water advocates around the globe. And so, but we've been really grateful that we did have that time to be with him and to learn from him.
Wow. Just think about if everybody took whatever passion was put into them and acted on it. How do you feel like that would even change water or what you see around the world?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that's what we need to get for water too, because, again, we said it's the most important resource that we have and it's under threat. But think that humanity has the ingenuity and the ability to solve the global water crisis, but to do it, we need to get everyone involved and to build their passion. They need to be change agents. And so we want to encourage everyone to think about why is water important to you is and to kind of touch back to memories they might have or experiences they had. There's treasured waterways they've been on, a place that's really, I would say, nurtured their soul and bring them happiness and a measure of peace, and a place that uh, they would not stand by and watch be sacrificed to polluters. And if you really dig deep down and find that passion, it helps you become more engaged. And that's what
Yeah.
we build an army of engaged change agents.
Yeah. It's interesting. If we had clean water, what I'm hearing is like the quality of life for every person would be better. And the reason we don't a lot of times is what either corporate greed or the lack of knowledge or different things. What do you see as you've seen decades of this are some of the core reasons that waters do get polluted?
Uh, yeah, there's a lot of them. I think that I was just frustrated by there was an article in the New York Times this weekend about how an EPA official was had previously been defending polluters in court from litigation over PFAS or forever chemicals. He's now at EPA and working to gut the rules that would hold those agencies accountable. And so it's really it's that playbook of industry insiders. They infiltrate the agencies that they're supposed to safeguard our health, and they rewrite the rules that serve corporate interests. And, EPA is supposed to be protecting people in the environment, not shielding chemical companies from responsibility. And so that's what I think a lot of it is, this like agency capture. And I know sometimes people ask like what would be best thing that could happen for water, and then surprise them sometimes and say, overturning Citizens United and getting campaign finance reform and getting money out of campaign contributions. Because that just leads to agency capture and people looking the other way and letting polluters have their way.
So many thoughts and words on that. I studied water, flowing water in at university, so that's why I was very wanting to talk with you about this. It's interesting when we think through kind of going back to the communication piece and how we need to, you know, work with people as you've seen, what is it? I guess one thing is if we had to look under the hood of your organization, what's a organizational weakness that you would hope that people wouldn't see?
Question. um,
Sorry. It's, we all have them, and that's the
yeah,
thing. My goal is to have hope, to learn from our good stuff, and also learn from our things that we would like to improve on.
yeah. I think it's a really good question. I think it goes to, being a global organization that was founded in the US, and where, with these 305 groups, about 50% of them roughly are US based and the other 50% are in 44 other countries. And so I think one of the biggest challenges that we still struggle with and are continuing to address in this current strategic plan is how do we provide equitable services to both the US based groups and the non-US based groups, because we're still heavily weighted in favor of the US based groups. And so, that's a big challenge, and that's where I think that I gave that story about Han Baykeeper, and that's a terrific story, but we need to make more of those. And that's a lot of where we need to leverage that and feel like how we lean into the power of a network, the people being part of that web and having a shared purpose, and making sure that each connection adds that resilience that we talked about and the creativity and the strength. But that's still a piece that we're still working on, is making sure we can provide that kind of equitable services across the globe and not just be so US centric.
That was very well spoken. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of nonprofits struggle with that. At least, being aware of it and then how to make a difference. Is there anything else you would like to just share with people? If you open platform.
Well, I like to go back to just again getting people to dig deep into the memories and the experiences they've had on water and why it's been important to them. And, I feel like I was brought into this work because of my childhood. I grew up on the Susquehanna River watershed in Pennsylvania, and I fished and swim. I went swimming and fishing day in and day out, and so water was just always part of me. And I didn't realize until I got a little bit older that that wasn't an experience that everyone else was having going out with I had a golden retriever, and we'd go out and swim and fish all the time, and realize that, not everyone can go down to their local waterway, jump in and have a swim without fear of getting sick. Not everybody can get a glass of water and drink it without fear of drinking poison. Not everyone can catch a fish and feed it to their family without fear of poisoning themselves with mercury or PCBs. And so that was my really where I dig down into deeply from my reason why I've gotten involved in this. And then it changes over time. Now I've got a 14-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son who mean everything to me. And I always tell people, like, I don't want to look back 20 years from now and wonder why I didn't do more to ensure them a safe and healthy future. And I don't want them to look back at me with anger and bewilderment and say, well, you left us contaminated rivers and dying oceans and dirty air. And I just feel we owe it to these future generations to give them a better world than what we inherited. And that's why people need to get engaged. And, there's a saying, it was Dr. King actually said, like, our lives end when trying to get this right. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And, our communities matter, our kids matter, our futures matter, our water matters, and water's behind all of that. So we really need to make our voices heard. Since we're talking about, global, you mentioned about what, we talk about water being the most important. You're probably familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and they look like a periodic chart. And I always say that they should redesign that and have water as like Atlas holding up the earth of all the other sustainable development goals, because
Yes.
we can't solve poverty, can't solve peace, we can't ensure peace and all these other things and hunger
Yes.
if we don't have water. So, it's up to us to make our voices heard and take action to do that.
That's beautifully said. How can people get involved or help? Like, if you got me excited, what can I do?
So we're our whole organization is really based on that old saying of like think globally and act locally. This is that you get the biggest impact you can have is at the local level. So we certainly always encourage people to get engaged locally. For one thing, you know, go to waterkeeper.org and you can sign up for our action alerts, so you can find places where you can make your voice heard on national or other international issues that will affect your local waterway. But you can also find your local waterkeeper and get engaged with them, whether it's going out and engaging in a cleanup, showing up at a hearing where you can testify, making a donation, whatever it might be. Those are critically important things to do and take action locally. And then the other thing I would say is for people to vote, and vote for, people who vote for officials who are going to walk the walk and walk the walk, not just talk it, and who are going to stand up to polluters and not just be puppets for them.
Well said. I'll make sure that that link is in the show notes, because we each do our part, and like you said, it's the foundation of solving poverty and um, just from there on. So love it, love it. Anything else you want to share before we close up?
I'm really grateful for this opportunity. It's been really fun having this conversation, and really like the perspective you bring into it.
Mark, it's been great. So thank you so much. And who knows, maybe we'll have to have a follow-up sometime.
Sounds great, Marla.